Hey, I'm Darren, and today I am going to build an LED ring light for my camera. Twice. For those who may not know what a ring light is, it is usually a ring of LEDs that goes around the camera lens for the smaller versions and evenly lights whatever you're shooting, your subject. It gives a good general wash of light with soft shadows. There are also bigger ones they call diva lights that the camera shoots through. The UFC uses that in The Ultimate Fighter, and you can actually see the ring in his eyes because that's a bigger light. I'm going to build a small one that goes around my camera lens.
I have heard so many people say in build videos, if I had it to do over again, I would just do this. Well, yeah, I'm actually doing it over again. What you're seeing there is my first attempt at this build. Just click the link over there if you want to skip it. I'm not going to talk through exactly everything I did wrong, but I am basically an untrained hack. And I had a little bit of woodworking in school years ago, but I just kind of figured it out as I go. I'm a DIY guy. Some of the things I did wrong here is I used the wrong lens really to measure this hole, and I cut it too big, and the idea of using the rubber hose to make it fit tightly on the lens, it seemed like a really good idea, but it didn't work all that well. So I'm going to scrap that and move on to something else. I also didn't leave enough room for the wiring. It was bulkier than I thought it was going to be. I think I chose the wrong way to solder this thing together. The battery, I didn't really have a place for it. I chose to try to use a 9-volt. These are 12-volt lights, and I chose to use a 9-volt for it. And I didn't really have a place for the battery yet. I was going to figure that out later, and it was just kind of awkward. And the 9-volt was a little bit dim from what I thought these lights should be putting out. And it also, that 9-volt ran very hot in a very short time. I think the 12-volt lights were trying to pull too hard on it. I also had so much trouble wiring this switch in that on the second round I just totally gave it up. So I decided to scrap this one, tear it apart, and start over. Originally I had wanted a very low profile, very thin thing, and I kind of went the opposite of that on the next one. So I took a cover off of a blank disc spindle and I marked 3 inches. I was just going to cut it to 3 inches and cut it down to proper size once I knew how big the battery holder was going to be, because I didn't have it yet. So I cut it, and actually cutting these, you kind of melt about half of it, so it leaves all kinds of chunks and bits. And so I cleaned it up and straightened it up as much as I could manually there. Traced the lens size and used my Dremel to kind of size that up and get as close to that line as I could, and even tested on the camera while it recorded to see if it fit. After painting it black, I accidentally broke a chunk out of it trying to drill the hole for the wires. I was stupid and made a mistake. So I took the top disc protector out of the blank discs. It's that, usually it's clear, but this one was black. Plastic thing that sits on top of blank discs. And I sized the hole out for it to fit on the camera and glued it on top where the broken piece was. I thought it would add some stability also. the lights themselves are actually LED ring lights. They're halos for headlights on cars. That's why they're 12 volt. And I'll put a link in the description where you can buy those on eBay. The outer ring that I have right now actually has some LEDs that are bad on it, and he's going to send me a replacement, so the seller was a good seller. I used hot glue to space them this time. I learned that from the last time because I didn't have the spacing right when I soldered it together. I also used stiff copper wire, which made it a whole lot easier to solder them together and to hold them in the right place. And since I had drilled a hole for the wires, I had a place for them to go directly from where they're soldered to the inside of the case, and that way there was no bulk out there where they needed to be. And using this wire and holding them spaced correctly made this 1,000 times easier to solder the second time around. And I cut down as much of that ring material as I could because it was so bulky with the 3 inches. I didn't cut any of the 3 inches off. I just cut down everywhere except for where the battery holder was. And this is kind of what I ended up. The glue is disastrously ugly, and I will clean that up when I put the new ring on. But I made it as low profile as possible with 8 AA batteries attached to it, which seems like a lot, but it was worth it for the brightness. So my ancient radial arm saw was my first model for this light to see how well it would fill in and give a good, even, soft light. And I think it looks pretty good. It has done a job that I expected it to do. That saw is great, by the way. My next model is my favorite little Joby GorillaPod that holds smaller cameras. I use this in the shop all the time. It has magnetic feet. But I think that the light fills well. I don't know what all I'll use it for. Final shots, maybe. I apologize for the loud breathing. I have been really, really sick this week and still kind of recovering from all of that. But hopefully you learned from my lessons that I learned during this. And if you choose to do this, that you might have gotten some ideas from it. It's not that difficult. I just wasn't sure what I wanted, I guess, in the beginning, and had to do it twice. Or maybe what I thought I wanted wasn't really what I wanted. Anyway, thanks for watching. You'd do me a great service if you would subscribe if you feel I earned it. And we'll see you next week.